Chris, how was your pee break?
My pee break.
It might flash you undetected.
Random, baby.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Quite an intro.
Let's address the elephant in the room. That's not the elephant in the room. There's no elephant. Nobody cares.
I too am a thought criminal. Good. Well, I like you already.
Does this look like a girl who's joking around?
No.
Around?
But how much do you actually understand money? Especially the new wave.
Beauty or intelligence? When you unleash both, it is men's kryptonite. Welcome to Talk to Me, Taylor. What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Look, better late than never to drop this interview. Now is the time. I teased it on last night's show. You know, I like a little cliffhanger. And the time is now. This is going to be with CEO Adam Swart of the largest paid protesting, if you will, firm company in the country, Crowds on Demand. And boy, oh boy, with everything that we've seen being super obviously rattled, we're seeing the Turning Point events start back up again. And we all are just really figuring out all of it. What is real? You know, even being, do we want to participate, being scared in crowds? And we're all so, I mean, you want to say divided even more. It's like we couldn't even get people to say that the horror we saw, you know, was a bad thing. That's how fractured we are right now. And so Adam, who is actually here, I'm going to bring him on quickly to say hi before I roll this interview, which we shot, by the way, in July. I want to see Adam. Hang on, I'm bringing you up here. Hey, there you are. Long time no see. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. And I'm excited to see the interview in July. I mean, I hope the interview ages like fine wine and not like sour milk.
Adam, I'll be honest, I have not watched it back since. So that's why I preface this, why we did, you know, shoot in July. But wouldn't you say, I mean, we really get into a friendly debate, I would say. We have a lot of fun. We talk about, you know, is it fueling the fire? You know, what you do, the ethos of it, the ethics of it. How would you describe it, Adam, in just, you know, recent memory? Looking back,
well, I think it was a really fun conversation. I think we had some disagreements and some agreements.
Yeah,
on a lot of things. I think we agreed that the idea of one of the things that really pushes the idea that Crowds on Demand and what we do is we're a catalyst to get attention for causes, attention for candidates, attention for you know, companies, right? But it's not manipulation. I really try to push it, this idea that it's publicity. It's another publicity strategy. I think you push back a little bit. So we kind of get into it.
That's right.
But I think it's a very respectful and fun, spirited dialogue. So that's exactly the kind that I enjoy doing.
Even in the spirit of Charlie Kirk and what he was doing before all this. And you're exactly right. I do press you on it, even when it's something like coming to, you know, these, when it comes to these causes or human rights, all this, how much of it is manufactured? It's all about the branding, all about the marketing. So we get into that. Adam, I have to start rolling, but guys, we are going to be backstage. We will be in the comments. We'll be watching. And Adam, thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm going to throw our asses backstage and let's get right to it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Chris, how was your pee break?
My pee break.
It might flash you undetected.
Random, baby.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Quite an intro.
So bring them into the conversation instead of berating them constantly.
I too am a thought criminal. Good. Well, I like you already.
Does this look like a girl who's joking around?
No.
But how much do you actually understand money? Especially the new wave.
Beauty or intelligence? When you unleash both, it is men's kryptonite. Welcome to Talk to Me, Taylor. Okay, all the world's a stage is certainly taking on a different meaning in life of its own with this guest I have here today who, in my years, 5 years of Talk to Me, Taylor, 10 years of red carpet reporting, I don't know that I've had anyone quite like him. He's a little bit of an anomaly and enigma. So without further ado, we have Adam Swart. Okay. Adam is the, hey, Adam, long time no talk except for behind the scenes. I'm going to do a little intro for you here for the peoples, and then we'll get into it. All right. So, Adam, you are the CEO of Crowds on Demand, not to be confused with Video on Demand, no VOD, Crowds on Demand. Okay. It is the OG, as you say, paid protesting and rally firm, which you started at 2000 at UCLA. I'm sorry, in 2012. I assume you were a student there at the time. And this is so fascinating to me, Adam, on so many levels, okay? Because you're here to shine light on, in such a polarizing, intense time, how many of these rallies and protests and people being up in arms is theater, how it's orchestrated, how it's, mass manipulation, be it for social or political pressure. And what's interesting about you is you are not a conservative, you say, but you are no longer at home on the left, like many people, myself included, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, after being a lifelong liberal. And you recently went viral. You've been on News Nation with Chris Cuomo, on Newsmax. Dan Ball on OAN was rather combative with you, basically calling you a shit stirrer, and saying, like, how dare you in such tense times. And I have to say, Adam, you've admitted to hiring quote activists, right? And for optics, for causes to get traction and visibility, and that some have been for good, you've argued. And I'm not gonna lie, my viewers, they will either love or hate you. I'm not even decided, Adam. I'm not even sure. I'm like, is this guy just capitalizing on this and is evil, or is he pure genius? So maybe we will find out. And that is my little spiel. But yes, interesting to say the least, and fascinating. Adam, welcome to the chat. Let's do it.
Thanks, Taylor, for having me on. You're right about all that. Dan gives me a hard time. I go on his show all the time on OAN, but
Yeah.
he's kind of like a frenemy.
Okay.
We barbs, but I think with all this stuff, I think the problem is that people misunderstand what we do as a business. So I'm really excited to kind of rebut some of the misinformation that people kind of have about me online. That's, by the way, why I'm here. That's why I do some of these news bites, is so that people can maybe understand my perspective and understand what we really do, instead of just sort of being like, oh my God, paid protesting, bad, right? Which is what a lot of people do, and they just kind of leave it at that.
Well, I'm certainly a major skeptic, Adam, because
Sure.
the underpinning of everything I've done as a reporter, podcaster, is free speech. And that's maybe why Dan went off on you, because the First Amendment is so precious and near and dear to our hearts and so important. And so to feel like it's, orchestrated, manipulated, used, in an advantageous way, or that's fake, is like what is sad. It's just like, what's going on?
Well,
But
let's unpack that.
let's unpack that and tell me, Adam, not in a canned PR way, but straight up, why? Why in 2012 out of UCLA start this?
Okay, well, there is a demand for setting things in the right context, right? So I always say this. So this is kind of the canned thing I say, which is that imagine the same speech delivered, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech delivered in front of 10 people, right? It was a beautiful speech, but it would not have had the same resonance, right? So when we're unpacking, context is everything. A lot of amazing businesses die because no one knows about them. A lot of amazing causes die because no one knows about them. So let me just go, first of all, to what people don't understand about protesting, is that protests are like advertisements. They're not a plebiscite. So I think people misinterpret protests when they say, oh, well, you're manipulating people by compensating people to show up. No, that's not what a protest is for. A protest is to draw attention, just like an advertisement is to draw attention. If Cheetos has an advertisement at the Super Bowl, Cheetos is trying to get you to buy Cheetos, right? The question is it a good ad? And do you want to have Cheetos? Like, I hate Cheetos. You could not possibly convince me to eat a Cheeto, no matter how many times you advertise to me. But same thing with protests. Like, I could do a protest for Trump, right? And there are people on the left who, doesn't matter how convincing the protest is, will never support Trump, and vice versa, right? So what a protest is a way of getting attention for something, not a plebiscite of this is how many people are on this side of an issue, or this is how many people are on that side of an issue.
You are you are so spot on about the fact that everything, even you mentioned Trump, even politicians, everything is down to marketing and personal branding straight up. I explore this on the show constantly. I'm like, how do we even know what is real? Like right now, the whole Sydney Sweeney thing is going on,
Yes.
right? The whole controversy with American
Who
Eagle.
cares?
Well, my thing is also, does everyone hop on board because everyone's hopping on board? Do we actually,
Correct.
music, movies, whatever it is, Adam, causes, do we actually think and like this, or is it marketed so hard that we think we do? Like we don't even
Correct.
know anymore what's real and fake, and that's why
I think
I
people
could see with you're doing, it's I could see the skeptics, again, myself included. Is it Slim Shady? What's real, what's fake? Are we just being manipulated?
Well, I think the reality is we live in a capitalist society, right? Where money is sort of involved in everything, campaigns are involved in everything. So there's money behind politicians, there's money behind advocacy, there's money behind brands and advertisement, right?
Yes.
So whenever you open your screen, walk outside the door, you're being marketed to. Protest is one style of marketing. So I think the misnomer that people have is that a protest is some sort of expression of public sentiment. It never has been. It's certainly the people who are out there do believe what they believe. And by the way, one misconception is the people who come to our events at Crowds on Demand don't believe in the cause. What we do is we pay people to show up for causes that they do believe in, right? What we compensate them for is expressing their views, not for essentially like just showing up. Do you see what I'm saying?
But well, first of all, I love that this is the most fired up I've seen you, and so I love it, Adam. How do you really say somebody? I've been a starving artist. I have done, even not that long ago, Adam, I have done shit that I don't know I would
Sure.
write home about or advertise to make a buck, to make a couple $100. How do you know that they aren't just like, yeah, I support pussy hat wearing or Palestine or whatever it is that day to make a couple $100? How do you
All
really
right,
know?
let me give you this analogy. So think about Tucker Carlson, Rachel Maddow, Rogan, right? These people make eight figures, maybe nine figures, I think it is, with Joe Rogan. And people generally give them the benefit of the doubt that they're expressing their sincere point of view, right, on the issues. So if you're saying Rachel Maddow believes in the liberal views, Rogan believes in the sort of libertarian views, Tucker believes in the sort of hard right conservative views, right? And they're getting paid eight figures, nine figures, hundreds of millions of dollars to talk about this stuff. How rude is it, not that you're being rude, to say that somebody who shows up for a few $100 to protest something, oh, they're not sincere? I feel like that's sort of a classist argument, because to me, it's like, so you're saying somebody who is a Trump supporter would go to a BLM rally for a few $100? Fat chance. Someone who's a BLM supporter would go to a Trump rally for a few $100? Fat chance. I know many people, many of my friends are on either side of the spectrum. They really wouldn't do it. So the reality is what Crowds on Demand often does is we actually give voice to a lot of working class people who would love to express their views, but they have an hourly job. They have kids to feed. They can't just spend half their day at a protest like a hippie at a trust fund with a trust fund could. They have to actually go out there and work every day, unless someone like us gives them the opportunity to express their view and be paid for it.
I think that, and I saw you say something similar to Chris Cuomo when he was
Yeah.
challenging you on this. And I think that it's a very, I don't want to say naive, but idealistic way of looking at it because, and look, I'm trying to keep an open mind here, and I get how on one end of it, you're like, we've actually made shit happen, and they could be good advocacy and good causes. And we allowed things to actually not only be put into motion, but move forward, whether it's policy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of things, right? But to challenge that, there are also so many people out there who could truly not give a shit. Like I've seen so many protesters like I don't even know why I'm here. And they just want to make a couple $100.
Okay, well,
So
let's talk
to
about that, Taylor.
be, yeah, to give them all the benefit of the doubt of like, this is Joe, he is on his 9 to 5 and he wants to be paid to say his piece, whatever, about every single one of them, I think is just
Well, I think
kind
I
of
have a
naive.
solution. I think we have to have a device that understands everyone's ulterior motives for being any place. I think we should just
What?
understand. I think we need a device that so where we can see everyone's ulterior motives for being somewhere. So if you go to a protest, why are you there? If you go to a party, why are you there? Are you just trying to get a girl? Are you trying to impress somebody? Like, so what you're trying to say is people may have ulterior motives for doing things. I'm saying, yeah, that might be true. And I can't perfectly gauge everyone's ulterior motives, just like I can't gauge whether does Joe Rogan believe in the vaccine skepticism or is he trying to make a couple bucks off of it? I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of it, right? Humans are react to a combination of things, and we naturally is that we have a predilection to doing what is in our self-interest. So you're right that, hey, if you're getting paid a few $100, you might try to see that cause in a better light, just like if you're a media commentator or if you're a protester, right? I mean, have the people at Woodstock were trying to, we're not protesting Vietnam, they were trying to get laid and smoke pot, right? So like have the people at the BLM rallies were just trying to flex on Instagram, right? So people at the Trump rallies are trying to network with other like-minded people. Like Trump rallies are like a fair, right? So if you're saying, okay, well, everyone at a protest has to be there completely because they 100% believe in the cause and not for any other reason, I don't think you'd have anyone showing up at any political event.
Well, here's what I really, off of the bat, think, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, and it's sort of
Sure.
debunking your analogy of, because again, I saw you with Chris say this, that essentially Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Chris Cuomo, Rachel Maddow, as you say, all of these high profile public figures who are paid millions of dollars to essentially voice their opinion, right? So what's the difference between them and, Rob down the street working a blue collar job who wants to get paid, a couple $100 for advocacy? And what I would say, Adam, is again, for someone like me who, they always say freedom's not free, right? Which is not. And why the First Amendment, again, it's supposed to be, especially with protests, like it's not something that we should take lightly. So if it would be used in an opportunistic way that feels orchestrated and
How is that
contrived,
opportunistic?
when it's supposed to be right, the pure will of the
Journalists are
people
supposed to
going
be
out on a
completely
limb.
sincere.
But
Well,
wait, hang on.
okay, go on.
Here's what I would say, right? That's the difference between someone like a Tucker Carlson and what you're describing is the transparency, sheer transparency. So we know
I don't know how much
where
time.
Rachel, where Tucker, where Joe, we know where they're coming from. We know their media biases. We know they're a public figure. With paid protests and rallies, we don't know that they're being paid. We're led to think that it's real. And it just feels like the lack of transparency for
There's two
me.
problems with that argument. Number one is the fact that everyone who goes out to protest, like my analogy about, so when you see a BLM rally, right? The Real Housewives, there was a lady, there were several of the Real Housewives who were at BLM rallies. You didn't think they know shit about institutional racism? No, they don't know shit. They're trying to flex on Instagram and see
100%, 100%.
right? So my point is everyone who goes out to a protest has a reason for doing it. I know a lot of guys who've been out to a protest because they're like, oh, it's mostly women in the protest. Let me see if I can get laid at this thing, right? Because by showing I'm like woke with the cause. I don't know if that works, but the point is there are a lot of reasons why someone might show up. Labor unions regularly essentially incentivize people to show up at their events. Actually, by the way, Taylor, you might not know this, but a lot of people you see at rallies are off-duty political staffers. So they might work for the Los Angeles City Council during the day, and then they're going to a political rally in the evening, and that's sort of an expected part of their job, even though they're being paid as a legislative analyst for the Los Angeles City Council. They might be essentially expected to go to Democratic political events. And by the way, both parties do that. So what you're saying, I understand, which is that, okay, it's hard when you feel like people have different incentives to be there, and what I'm saying is receiving cash compensation is just one of many, many incentives people might have to show up at a protest or at a rally. So it gets into what the very first thing I said on this podcast, which is there's a misunderstanding of what a protest is. The way that I look at a protest is it's an advertisement. It's a way of basically getting a lot of attention. Number one, attention from the people who you're outside, whether it's the Congress or whatever. And number two, amplifying that on media and social media, right? To raise awareness about the cause, to engender more discussion about the cause. So I think if you understand it as an advertisement and not as a plebiscite, I think you're gonna better understand what it is that a protest is and is not.
I think this is the crux of it right here, right? Where it could get, again, even a little tense with people like Dan Ball or whoever it is, because of what you just said. It's sort of like two ways of looking at it. It's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, it's essentially advertising and marketing, and bitch, we are in a shameless world and everybody is marketing everything all of the time. On the other end of it, again, like the way I see it, Adam, is something like protesting that is so precious. Like in other countries, you'd be gunned down. So that's why it really is indicative of like when we see it even still, and why it causes our hearts and minds to change, is because it makes us feel like it's on display, the real will and voice of the people, like going out on a limb and really advocating. So it's like, okay, if they're getting paid, if it's this, if it's that. And I guess maybe the takeaway, Adam, like between our two roots of it or views of it, is to really sort of not believe everything that you see at face value.
I kind of would respectfully disagree actually with that viewpoint. I think what it would be is understand what the discussion topics are, understand what the talking points are. So if you see a protest, don't immediately say, oh, well, this is paid, this person's behind this protest. Assume that there is a billionaire somewhere backing that protest, because every cause in America is backed by a billionaire. I promise you, Taylor, every cause in America is backed by a billionaire. Well, it doesn't fucking matter. They're Marxist billionaires, as ironic as that is, right?
You don't say it ain't so, Adam.
Every cause in America is backed by a billionaire. Some of them are backed by multiple billionaires and corporations. So, okay, let's just take that as an assumption. So do I agree with this or do I not agree with it? So, for example, let's just take the issue of transgender rights or responsibilities, right? So I might see one protest that says, no men in women's sports, right? And on the other side that says trans lives matter, right? And okay, well, which side do I believe in? Both sides. I assume both sides are extremely well funded, Taylor, right? There's conservatives who back this no men in women's sports, right? Like the Riley Gaines and the like. And then of course there's the LGBT groups on the other side who are backing the trans lives matter. Okay, fine. Let's let both of them use protest as a way to get our attention. But then through that attention, they must convince us. Right? So I don't give a shit if 100,000 people or 1,000 people are in the street. What I care about is what are they saying to convince me or to not convince me. With the 100,000 versus 1,000 is, if you have 1,000 people, you'll probably get a decent bit of media coverage. If you have 100,000, it's going to be front page news, right? In this country. In France, 100,000 people is just another day, right? But in America, 100,000 person protest is front page of everything, right? So, well, what are you going to do with that front page? This is a country of 330 million people. So if 100,000 people protest, that doesn't mean that that's how the country thinks. That means that's what those 100,000 people and their donors think, right? So fine. Are they making a good point or are they not making a good point? If the trans activists are making a point about, okay, well, if you keep bullying trans people, there's going to be more suicide. Well, that's a very compelling point. Let's hear statistics. If the other group is saying, well, if you have the men and women's sports, you're going to have more injuries of girls. That's a good point. Okay, we'll let them both use the attention from the protest to convince people. But instead of saying what I think dumb people say, and why a lot of dumb people are mad at me, is they're like, oh, well, where 1,000 people showed up on one side and 100 people showed up on the other side. So therefore, the people are 10 to 1 for this side and against that side. And by providing the people on one side, you've manipulated the discussion. Well, they're stupid if they believe that. So that's their own fucking problem.
But how is that so? Because to your point, if you see 1,000 people versus 10, right, we're going to think, oh, that's going to move you. That's going to impact you and say you're
But that's
behind
a
those
naive
10,000
assumption.
people, right?
That's
It's like Puppet Master.
That's a naive assumption. If you see a lot of political, I mean, it's a naive assumption because it doesn't understand the idea that there is just a ton of money behind everything that we see. So assume that if there's a protest, there is some wealthy group that is trying to market that. So if I see a Super Bowl ad,
That's fair. That's fair. I will
I
say
see a
that. Yeah,
Super
that's
Bowl
why I
ad,
don't believe everything you see at face value.
I don't believe in anything I see on advertising or anything. Now, if they make a good point, I will look more into the points that they're making, right? So
Yeah.
I think that there's a naivete, and even aside from compensated demonstrators, there are so many sides, by the way, Taylor, where we've worked on the side of the silent majority. So, like, I'm not going to give any examples here, but there are a lot of issues, and we can all kind of think of what they are, where 80% are on one side of the issue, and you have a very vocal 10, 20% on the other side who always gets what they want, because these are the people who always show up, they protest, they yell and scream, right? So what we often do is provide the voice for the 80%, and we put people there. So the 80%, they have kids, they have jobs. So what's wrong with saying we're going to actually provide the demonstrators to represent the people who are otherwise unrepresented?
I had wondered that because I saw, in the write up about you, in the pitch that you again no longer feel at home with the left, how they're so whiny and all this. And actually, you jumped ahead because one of my questions here on this like Harry Potter invisibility cloak of my notes was, do you like Harry Potter, Adam? Don't be protesting Harry Potter, Adam, or I'll come for your ass.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I'm medium on Harry Potter. I'm medium on Harry Potter. I'm not
Fine.
I'm not like the biggest fan. Actually, I will tell you, so when I was a kid, it was the first book I actually started reading. I was like 6 years old. My dad started reading it to me, and then at some point he's like, you should start reading it yourself. So it was actually sort of the first full-size novel I read, I'm pretty sure. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, you might like that.
I do, see something will unite us in the end. And I was going to say, Adam, right? Even if we come at it, I love healthy disagreement and debate. Yeah. And even though we come at it from different angles, what I can appreciate about what you're saying is, as though I can't get behind all of this and your ethos and point of view on it. However, your stance of it's all out there. This is a free country, free speech. Like you decide, basically think and decide for yourself. Fair enough. Okay. That part I get. The optics and manipulation, all that's a harder pill for me to swallow. But what I was going to say was I did wonder if part of this was to air out the quote unquote silent majority in almost your way, because no longer feeling at home with the left and feeling like they are so loud, even if it's a small group of people who think extremist, woke, whatever you will, things, but it's so loud. Was this initiative your way to sort of combat that and
I think a little bit
create an even playing field, so to speak?
Look at defund the police. That's just one example of an issue, right? Where I think like 80% of people are like, no, we probably want equal or more police funding. But the defund people were so loud that they ended up getting what they wanted, right? So in many cities, right? And that's why a lot of American cities have become more dangerous, is because of the defunding of the police due to this loud 20%. Well, what if you had people to represent the 80%? So because the thing is, politicians are unfortunately stupid for the most part. And what they do is they fall victim to this same trap of 100 people on one side, 10 on the other, showing up to the meeting. So I assume people are 10-1 on this side. So I'm going to vote for the side of the 100 instead of the side of the 10, even though it's more likely that the 10 in many cases represents the majority view, right? So we actually then become the voice of the silent majority. Now, there are cases where the left is on the side of the silent majority, right? So what I like to do with Crowds on Man is represent the silent majority who basically needs that incentive to get out there, because the other side is out there in droves. We're actually the voice of the people who have jobs, who have kids, who can't come out there.
So this brings me to a really crucial question about all of this and everything that you've done.
Yeah.
Is because on your site, you do more than just organize and paid protest rallies. You do things like publicity stunts. This is all out there, and it'll say like request a quote, all of this.
Correct.
What happens, Adam, if somebody hires you or wants to hire you for a cause that you personally cannot get behind? Or does money talk and you're like, well, they're willing to pay a hefty sum. I can't stand or stomach this cause, but I'll do it.
Well, there are two aspects to that. One is they call it, the political science term is the Overton window, basically the range of acceptable discourse, right? So number one, I think of it as like if you're ABC News or CBS News and you're thinking of an ad, right? If the neo-Nazis of America wanted to do an ad on ABC News, ABC, doesn't matter how much they're paying, would say, no, we're not going to take your ad, right?
Sure.
Because it's outside what's called the Overton window. So we sort of observe that same rule, right? Where it's like, if it's just absolutely crazy, we're not going to do it, right? And if the cause is offensive, hateful, etc., we have no desire to do that. So that's number one. Number two is we have to evaluate, do they have a point, right? So there's certain aspects that I might not agree with 100%, but I still feel like are worthy to evoke, right? Someone asked me about that for an example of that. And one is like, okay, let's just say Adam tends to believe we should give more money to Ukraine to, stop what the Russians are doing.
Sure.
Right. So Adam thinks that, right? Well, maybe there's someone who is coming in and says, I don't think America should be giving money to any of these countries, right? So if I felt that they were like pro-Putin, obviously I'd have no interest in doing that. But if it was saying, hey, I think America needs to focus on America and we shouldn't be so focused on abroad, is that a point that I 100% agree with? No, but is it a point that has some merit that we could still do a good job of expressing in an eloquent way? Yes. So the answer is, do I have to 100% agree? No, but it certainly helps.
So it's almost like a marketing agency. Say it's like Coke. Say you think Coke, you are ride or die Maha. And you are like, I think Coke is bad. But what's that?
Well, Coke is like evil, actually.
But that's a good example, right, Adam? So say they want to pay you and they're going to be your client, but you're like, I cannot stand what these people are about, but
they want us to promote water, I would, but not if they're promoting their poisonous cola beverage that has murdered many, many people of color and poor Americans. So yeah, no, I couldn't do that. Like, I'm too passionate about health to work for like Coke or McDonald's.
But that's where, Adam, where you see that this whole thing, even like still, I feel like, and I'm a really good read of people, like even still, I'm like, what is it? Like, I can't quite pin about you. You're obviously smart and educated and like a go-getter and a hustler. But I'm like, it would make people skeptic or think like, what is it? What are the intentions? What are the motives? Like, even with you, and it's funny, it was going to be one of my questions, but we ended up getting right into the ring and getting into it. But like, why? Like, what is the why? Because even like with publicity stunts, this, that, it's easy for someone to think this is just opportunistic. Like, what is the why? Especially if it's like, I'll take on this cause,
Well, it's a marketing agency, but number one, my goal, so this gets into, and I know whether this is something you're going to get into, is what is my goal ultimately is to focus solely on causes that I 100% agree with. So when you start a business, I'm not sure if you've started a business before, is when you start a business, you take anyone who's going to give you money, basically, unless they're just horrible, right? You're going to take anyone who's going to give you money. And I'll admit we did that, right? As long as it's not horribly offensive, we'll do it. Then as we've developed, I've been in business for 13 years, Taylor. So I'm more selective now than I was 10 years ago, right? And I hope in 5 years, I'm going to be more selective then than I am now, right? So what I'm working toward is the ability to only take on causes that I passionately agree with.
Okay.
I'm not there yet because we don't have enough of those who are willing to pay the bills, right? But eventually,
Listen,
I want to get there.
I'll give you questionable, but I'll give you credit for being transparent and just saying what you've done and where you're coming at it, where you're coming at it from. All right, are you ready before we wrap for a little bit of rapid fire here?
Do rapid fire.
Okay, because say there are some skeptics. I mean, you've seen a lot and you're
Yes.
pretty adamant like it is not that pure. All of these causes are funded, the funds are buried, they're under the guise of nonprofits, all this, right? So, in a nutshell, before we do our rapid fire, because I have some notable and notorious protests here that I want to get your quick hot take on of what really happened there. But convince people in like a second, sorry, in a minute, Adam,
Okay.
why this is true and why so much of it is fake and funded and by, the powers that be, not really the little people.
Well, I guess the only sort of issue that I take with that is that everything is funded, but it's not a bad thing. That's my point, is that when there are companies that advertise to you that have products that you want. There are causes that advertise to you that are causes that you like. So my advice to people in this 1 minute period is to say, look at the talking points, look at the cause, and do you agree with the cause? And understand that a protest, a TV ad, a politician, a PAC, a super PAC are all just vehicles for people who are passionate about the cause to essentially advocate for their cause. So if you agree with it, engage with it. If you don't agree with it, don't engage with it. And if possible, try to leave yourself open to being persuaded by the arguments. But don't be persuaded. Don't be a sheep. Don't be persuaded just because you see thousands of people on this side or see a ton of advertising on that side. That's just money talking. Understand the talking points. What money should do is buy you, money gets you visibility. The product and the cause gets you notoriety and the ability to advance. So that's my take.
I have to admit, this whole thing like kind of puts my brain in a pretzel because you're like, we will, hire us to give visibility and optics and people to come out. And then in the same breath, it's like, but don't believe, but there's a lot of people that are coming out because
I'm
you
not saying
don't know
don't
who, I'm like,
believe,
what is happening,
No, I'm not
Adam?
saying don't believe. I'm saying what I'm saying isn't don't believe. It's understand that is a way to get publicity and it's an effective way. Just like it's like buying a Super Bowl ad.
Like, it's basically like buying an ad out of Times Square.
Yeah. Do you think that that's a bad thing? Do you condemn the people who sell those ads?
I think that again, it's a transparency thing. We know that it's marketing. We know we're trying to be
All
sold
marketing.
this
With protests or not.
with protests, with rallies. We don't know. We think that
what
they're
we
really
should
there.
try
It's the
is a solution.
transparency.
Let's all write a little post-it note on our little lapels
Adam.
and say, this is why we're here. I'm here to impress a girl. I'm here to flex on Instagram. I'm here to,
Okay, here, flex on Instagram. Here, that would be basically everybody under the sun.
everybody.
So, okay.
So let's just like get out of our heads and stop being so sanctimonious.
It's just no, I hear you. It just feels
I'm not saying you,
counterintuitive
I'm
and
saying
contradictory.
that.
It feels contradictory. You know what it is
I
with
don't
your
think
like
it
put it all out there?
Yeah.
It's sort of even the like the pundit, the Tucker Carlson, Rachel Maddow analogy with these protesters. It sort of reminded me, it's like, okay, it almost feels like someone you're paying like a paid date to a wedding. It's like, sure, do they want to be there? Yes, but we're all being tricked into like that it's real.
Oh.
Like, do they want to be there and they'll have a good time? Sure, but it's like not, it's a facade. It's like not really love or romance or a couple or that they want to be there for this reason. It's like, but that's what it's giving off to us. That's not bad thing.
I mean, look, we've all been to events that we're less excited about. I'm going to a Grateful Dead concert, which I'm not that excited about, but my family wanted to go, and I was like, I'm gonna go not because I really want to sit on the grass and get a contact high from all the weed, but because people in my family wanted to go. So does that mean that I hate the Grateful Dead? No, I just don't give a fuck. Like, but my family wanted to go, and I'm a good cousin. So, like, is that a bad thing? Like, people go to protests because their cousin wanted them to go, or their aunt wanted them to go, or they're trying to impress a girl. Being compensated is just one of the many reasons people go to a protest other than complete sincerity. So, like, we can kind of go in circles on this, but I think I'm right. And I think
But Taylor, I
I'm
think
right.
my thesis is right. The last thing I'll say is it is like even Dan was like, "How do you sleep at night?" You know, and I think the thing that does, and you're very clever, and you're very, I get it. I get the advertising. I get like your work, your work around, you know, roundabout with it and all this. And I think, you know, in all seriousness, and I'm sure you've gotten this before, Adam, is that it is such hostile, tense, polarizing times, and we're
Yeah,
seeing it, you know,
too
and
much.
it gets people so riled up, whether in person, we see the protests on our phones, and it gets people so angry in real life. So one could argue it's like, are you throwing, you know, fueling the fire, you know, which
And I don't want to do that. And that's part of why I'm going on podcasts like yours, is to have, hopefully, maybe I'm not successful at it, but hopefully convince people that, hey, there's actually a merit to what we're doing, and to better put what we're doing in context, not as manipulation, but as a catalyst, as a form of marketing, right? So if you see me more as a marketer than as a manipulator, yeah, I mean, understanding that some degree of marketing is manipulation is, I think, hopefully people can better understand. But I hate the idea that what we have done, that we have in any way made the polarization problem, which is a major problem, worse. I mean, I actually think the reason that our country is so polarized is because you have two groups. Can I get into that for like 30 seconds? Why I think our country is so polarized that has.
yes, but and before you do, your thing is again like being transparent, throwing out, you know, what are people's intentions? I'd be curious to know, like, would you have people have a thing like paid to be here or something? That's kind of it.
If every single other person put why they're being there for, then I would gladly do that. I would gladly love the cause.
I'm
Pay to
saying.
be there. It's a beautiful day, and I want to stand outside. Right?
Just saying. All
That's
right,
okay.
give us your 30 seconds why we're so polarized, and then we're gonna end this with some rapid fire.
Because men who don't make a lot of money and aren't educated can't find women, and because educated successful women can't find men, and their one group is going super left and one group is going super right, and because they can't get laid and they can't find a match, and that is creating polarization, both from the woke left, from educated women, and the hard right, from less educated, less successful men, and that is pulling our country in opposite directions, and both of those are the leaders of those respective movements, and it's a major problem. So educated women, less educated men, they got to figure out how to get together, and they hate each other because one's like 90% Trump and one's like 90% hate Trump, and these people not getting laid and not getting together is hurting our country.
Oh my God, it is truly causing our woes and sorrows. And that is a I could see that, and it's another
It's the
rabbit hole for
biggest
another
national
time.
security problem to our
Exactly. A
country.
can of worms. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, ready, Adam?
Yeah.
So some big ones, and I want just your quick take of like what really went on, who was
Okay.
behind it. Do you think, let's go, you ready?
Sure.
Okay, all of the pro-Palestine protests and rallies across college campuses that we saw.
There's some Iranian funded stuff from Iran. There are also a lot of lefty billionaires in America who are funding this stuff. Um, a lot of the college students are very passionate about the subject. I think a lot of it goes into what's called intersectionality, which is the idea that there's certain people who are kind of oppressed, and there's this sort of solidarity among oppressed people. So if you're supporting BLM, you should therefore support Palestine and support undocumented and all of that. So you have a lot of the people who don't really understand the specifics of Palestine, but are generally sort of lefty activists who sort of get involved in it.
Okay. BLM during the pandemic.
Unfortunately, I think that the general idea that the police can be too harsh on African Americans, obviously there's merit to that idea, but the BLM people were total like hucksters. They were grifters. They were funded by like the wealthiest interests in America. The biggest corporations in America funded it. What they did, it's called basically, it's like an indulgence, like a tithing of sorts, where they're basically like, um, it's called like woke washing is what I call it. Basically, the essentially ESG, whatever you wanted to call it under that time, a lot of that has gone away in this current administration. But basically, they're like, hey, let's give money to BLM so we don't actually have to change our like hostile practices that are actually anti-worker and trying to maximize profit. So let's just give 20 million to BLM and essentially get the PR boost from that, and then the woke activists aren't going to bother us.
Wow.
Smart.
And
It's coming back to bite him under this administration, but yeah,
oh
go
my
on.
God. Or how about the like Patrice, what's her name? Like all the basically where it ended up being disclosed where all those millions and millions of dollars
Like
went
on
and like to
villas, like
mansions and to
private
LGBT.
jets, like yeah. Well, it was kind of like I unfortunately think the biggest victims of BLM are Black people themselves, because the impact of BLM was that it made our cities so much less safe, and the neighborhoods that became the most unsafe from it were predominantly Black neighborhoods. So it's like the white liberal women who I was just referring to, nothing
Mhm.
against them, who cheerleaded the defund the police
Yeah.
movement, are not the people who are in the end getting the ramifications of that, right? So that's
They clutch their purses when a Black person walks by. Meanwhile,
true.
didn't Breonna Taylor's family not even see a dime or something? Like they ended up,
I don't know that to be the
yeah.
case, but I wouldn't be surprised
And
if
they
that was.
completely grifted off of her.
Yeah, so it sucks. They really hurt the Black community a lot. And but again, it's one of those things where the silent majority of Black people, number one, we need nuance. The silent majority of Black people do understand that the police have not treated them with the same as they've treated white people, right? They understand that the police have shown too much brutality, but they want more police. They just want police who are reflective of the neighborhoods and our kind, right? And the reality is that the number of Black police officers and police chiefs has grown almost exponentially in the past 20, 30 years, and police brutality has decreased significantly. So while there's more work to do, BLM just completely perverted the facts and did
Yeah.
so much damage to our
Yeah.
city, but mostly to the Black
Yeah.
community, and it was funded by corporate America.
Horrible. Lastly, Adam, is Trump's, after he was elected, the hands off and the anti Doge protests.
Well, I think I've talked about the Doge one before a lot, which is that my speculation was that was funded by the Tesla short sellers. By certain, so just for your audience, short selling is like when you make money when the stock goes
Goes
down.
down, right?
So
So
it's when stock.
Tesla crashes, they're profiting if it
Correct. So, and I
plummets.
just want to be clear for legal reasons. I'm not naming anyone in particular. You just have to say that, like, I'm not like putting the finger on one particular like hedge fund or individual. But if you think about it, like, it just makes sense as an investment. If you have $10 billion on the line and you could spend $10 million on protests that would essentially make you $10 billion because you could tank the stock, like, why wouldn't you do it, I guess?
Wow. Adam Swart, fascinating to say the least. I love the friendly competition and dialogue, the democracy. That's what it's all about. And you'll have to come. You'll have to come back on, and we'll brush up on whatever everyone's going nuts over in these protests.
I
But
love it.
yes, very interesting and fascinating to say the least. And I appreciate the time, and I do appreciate that you were patient. I know we got a little delayed here, so.
Oh, that's totally fine. Patience, the better art of valor is patience, honestly. So, great. I love this conversation. I love chatting with you. I know my goal is the next time we chat, I'm gonna get you 100% on board with what I do.
How about this? We're gonna do a huge, show-stopping protest, not protest, I'm sorry. It'll be a rally for the Talk to Me Taylor show in Times Square flash mob, you know, the whole
But
thing,
Taylor,
you know, dethrone Joe Rogan, and then you have a believer in me, Adam.
you know what would actually work better is if we protested you, because it would actually work better. We've done this for a lot of people where we actually protest them, because it actually works better when you're being targeted, and we'd have the woke mob come for you, because then when they're coming for you, it's like, oh, now I want to see her. So actually that's how we'd do it. We'd probably actually go after you if that was what we did. So maybe we'll do it.
Genius. It's the American Eagle Sydney Sweeney effect. It's like, oh, it's taboo. Wherever the left's mad, we're going for it. So then, Adam, you have a believer in me.
I love it, Taylor. Well, thanks so much for having me on.
It was fun.
It was a really fun dialogue.
It was fun. It was fun. You'll be back again. And if you're ever this way in Nashville, we'll do it in person.